Hello. Welcome to the next session, which will be the session Democratizing the Energy Transition. And I'm very happy and humbled to lead through the session today, as I am coming from the industry myself. And I have been an entrepreneur in the energy industry for the last 15 years. And regarding the transition, I have some theses myself that I would like to challenge with my guests today, which is we think that the best energy is the energy we're not consuming. This is what the session is about. And the question is there a way to replace our fossil energy hunger with tech only, or do we have to change behavior in a very different way, and how do we do this? And finally, can the fight against poverty, can the fight for social solutions be a driver for innovation and sustainability? So I'd like to welcome my first guest, who will be Vincent Maillard. Vincent Maillard is founded Plum Energie and is representing the behavioral change.
Thank you very much. I'm not very, yeah, it must work. So I'm Vincent Maillard. I'm CEO and founder of Plum Energie, which is a French supplier of energy, electricity in France. Now we are part of Octopus Energie, which is a big UK-based group of energy. And let's start with, when you created Plum, what the hell wanted us to do when there are so many other suppliers in France, like in every country? And the answer is clear, it's simple. We did not want to be a supplier at the first stage. We wanted to help people to change the way they consume. But to step a foot into the door, we said, well, that's going to be obliged to be a supplier because it's a way to access to the customer. So we are not a supplier like that. We are someone who wants to change things and change the way people consume. Because we think that there is no way that you've got to say you have to change and to make a choice between green and cheap. We've got to have at some point the two things together, and don't ask people to change between that. And so what we did, sorry, I've got to be back. So what we did is to reward energy savings. Because rewarding energy savings means that you cannot push people to consume more because it's green. It must be green with lower energy consumption. And that's what we did. We rewarded the energy economy. When people consume less, they have a reward. And it works. It works because what we see is that people are reducing their consumption by around 10%, which is a huge amount of energy. Imagine if every people in the world were to, like that, reduce their consumption by 10%. We have a lot of problems that would be solved. Not all the problems, but a lot of them. And on top of that, what we said is, right, we are rewarding people when they reduce their consumption. But this reward can be used for paying their bill, of course. But we propose them to use it to invest in renewables or to help people who have difficulties with charities. We've got two partnerships with État du Carbone and Électriciens Sans Frontières about that. So it's not about yourself, it's about the others as well. And what we did also is, what we proved is that even a little player like Plum was able to change and shape the market. I'll just give an example. We initiated the natural idea to say we should not cut people during the summer. For the moment, it's possible for a supplier to cut the energy during the summer. And we said, no, it's not fair. So we stopped cutting the people during the summer. We are the ones who launched this idea. And a few months later, EDF, who is the incumbent, present on the French market for 70 years, they say, oh, now it's a good idea not to cut power during the summer. And they followed. And so we shaped the market. And this is possible. So, of course, the issues of global warming and climate change, the global one, and for that, we needed to be with a world group, and Octopus joined us, and we joined Octopus, and we are now Octopus, because, I mean, these is issues without borders. So what we did is, sorry, I'm on the other page of my speech. Yeah. So we, what is important to us is, I mean, we've got to embark people with our model, embark people towards energy transition, embark people towards better energy, better consumption. And for that, we've got to attract them and to make it possible to join us. And so it obliges us to have a great service, a great capacity of trust, because if people don't trust us, they will not embark and they will not change their way they behave. And that's a key thing for us. That's why we are on top of all the ratings on the French market for the customer care and so on. And that's something we invest in on just because it is necessary to embark people and to have more on-board people aware and acting on their consumption. And of course, the more you embark people, and if you embark with Octopus, which is a big group, the more you can have an effect. We made Plum in France, Octopus in the UK, Octopus elsewhere, initiative to help people reducing their consumption during this winter, because this winter was very tight for the energy supply. And we embarked hundreds of thousands of people saying, yes, we are okay to reduce our consumption during this winter. We already made it in France as a global view, on a yearly view, at 10%, but we additionally push people to reduce their consumption. There is a question. Can we change anything? The question that a lot of people are asking is it, I mean, if I do something, the others will do, I mean, the dirty things. It's not used for me to do something. Yeah, I came by on a bike today, yeah, with some everywhere, but I saw people with big cars and so on and so on. I know that in other countries people are using coal and so on. So should I say, yeah, it's stupid not to do this when other people are not doing anything? But the question is, if everyone thinks like that, nothing will never happen. So we've got to act. We've got to act because we've got to act on this not in my remit syndrome, where people say, well, at the end of the day, what I will do is a few parts, and it's not worth doing. And I can understand that. We embark people, we reward people, so we give reward, we give incentive to people for doing this. So that's why we do that, is for them to have a positive effect of their effort towards energy economy. But we have now, unfortunately or fortunately, a chance is that the planets are aligned. They are aligned for the French people. Macron is not at the Jupiter side, part, but that's a mistake apparently. Planets are aligned just because the problem you had previously is that the interest of a single people, the interest of a whole country, and the interest of the whole world were not aligned. The world needed people to reduce drastically their consumption, but a single people had no strong interest to do it because energy was cheap and they would not see the effect of their effort. It was the same for the countries. And now we see that a single person has a strong interest to reduce its consumption. A single country, like France or any other countries, have a strong interest to reduce the whole consumption of the country to gain sovereignty, independence towards independence of other countries. And so we have a very new situation we should act on, is that the interest of all the people on the world, from the single person to the country, to the whole planet, are the same. So it's the moment to act, not only because of what we know about climate change and the urgency to act in 3 years, but because we have this kind of strange opportunity to have these planets aligned. And now means now. We can act on everything. The first question is to be aware of what is or what are the consequences of our acts. I can take a lot of examples, but I will take a first example. When you have a shower a morning, it uses energy. Do you know how much you pay to put in every shower you take every morning? 25 centi euro. On the whole range of France, it's 10 million euros paid by Putin, meaning that from the beginning of the war, we paid 85 million euros to the Russians just by taking our shower. I don't say that you should take cold shower, everyone. That's what I do, but I'm very aware of that, but that's what I do. But you have a lot of things to act on. And the first thing is to be aware of what are the consequences of what you do. I could take other examples, like dry washer. You can take, of course, transport. You can buy the car. I mean, if people were to share their cars better, we could avoid buying petrol to put in like that. It's just simple things you've got to be aware of. We've got to act on now. Because now means now. I can take an example. The problem is we've been used for years, for tens of years, maybe for a century, to have a free, cheap, abundant energy. Let's take an example. We also have, for centuries, cheap and abundant sugar. And what we do is we overconsume. We overconsume energy as a whole, as a lot of people are overconsuming sugar on their side. And it's something, of course, that can trigger a reaction at some point. At some point, people can say, yeah, it's time to stop. And stopping overconsuming is not regressing. It's just changing. It's just to have another behavior. It's just to act differently. I spoke to someone today and speaking about the air travel. We can change. The first thing is to be aware of that. So I will ask to everyone here the question I ask to me every morning: what you have done? What did you do today to avoid consuming energy? What will we do tomorrow to avoid consuming energy? And for those who are listening, let you 15 seconds to think about that. I don't know what you thought about. You will maybe have time to think. Personally, I do it every moment while I'm brainstorming with people in my company, saying, yeah, I turn off the lights and so on every day. But if you have this in mind, you will see that you have a lot of opportunities to reduce your consumption now, not tomorrow, now. I could say, yeah, why the hell have you got so much lights like that? Is it useful? Okay, in a nutshell, I mean, acting is not it won't be the end of the world, but for acting, it's gonna be the end of the worlds. The world without acting is just worthless. And if we know that, the only conclusion we have is to act now, and that can be done if as we do, and as we continue to do as Plum, as Octopus, as other actors that are embarked and maybe follow what we can initiate, we give the right incentive to people to be aware, to know what they do, to reward them, and to accompany them to this kind of moment where all together we will act to reduce drastically the energy consumption. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Please stay on stage. You've got 2 minutes. So I would like just one question, because what we need here is not change, some change, we need major change. So as you founded a company, as you are acting in a very complex environment, one hint to all those founders that are out there and trying to get their innovation out and make it big. Something that you can tell them how they can start and why they can start right now. Give them motivation to the founders that are not yet started.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, so I will answer. And I'm sure it will be the answer to the question, but it will be my answer to the question I understood. The advice I would say is that you've got to have a project and stick to it. When you look at what we wanted to do 7 years ago, it was acting on behavior, it was rewarding people, it was going to the energy transition, and it was to do something which is, I would say, not greenwashing, was fundamental work on what people can do. And it's a hard way, but now we are still there when we see other suppliers are dying on the market, and we are still there probably because we stuck to our vision on to what we wanted to do at the beginning. And that is why we joined Octopus, because we met someone who has the same vision as us on the way a supplier, on the role of the supplier on the market, is to change the way people are acting, is to help them adapt their consumption to the generation, to the green generation, to the solar, wind, probably part of nuclear, or on the long run as well, generation. And we've got to make this work together, and that's our role. I don't know if it's the answer to the question, but
yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Vincent. And now, jingle? Yeah. Come on. All right. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to welcome our panel, our fantastic panel of experts that will be able to broaden the picture. So what I learned from your keynote here, a takeaway I had is that a single person needs to be motivated. Each one needs to be motivated to drive change. Although a single person has very, very little impact. But we are all single persons. We are all singles here, and we have to act together, and then we made a major impact. So what I would like to see, what I saw from you, is that you gather this in your solution, and I would like to invite my new guests here to give us their idea on how they act worldwide. So first, I invite Rim. And then please come on stage, Déborah. And we welcome online Deborah Gallagher in New York. So we were able to see her on the screen. Hi, Deborah. Thank you for being here. So some few words on my guests today. Rim Azirar, she's from SunFunder. She's investment director with SunFunder, and Rim has joined SunFunder in 2018 and leads transactions in West Africa. She's now investment director and in charge of developing SunFunder's portfolio across Africa in all sectors. So what we know from Rim that she has a vast experience in other markets than Europe, and I'd like to hear a lot more about this from you and also from other guests. Rim speaks 5 languages and is at home in the whole world. She carries a bachelor and a master's degree from Sciences Po Paris. I welcome Deborah Gaël. She's co-founder and COO of Koolboks. And Koolboks is one of these solutions that find innovation somewhere and implement a solution to drive change towards sustainability. She will tell us more what Koolboks is about. Deborah is co-founder and COO of Koolboks, and I'd also like to know a little bit about your personal motivations to do this. And then we welcome Deborah Gallagher. And Deborah Gallagher is a lot. She is a professor, she's author, she's a public speaker, and she has a vast experience as a consultant to business for social responsibility and helping companies to transition to net zero and to focus on climate justice. We have to keep that in mind, what climate justice means. That is also a topic of today. Deborah has also a deep knowledge in the sociological implications of climate change and climate innovation. And what I would like to ask about this is what is your takeaway, especially from Deborah, to the question how social change and climate change are connected. So let us start with our first guest here. Just a sec. To all of you, give us an idea. Make us put ourselves in the future a little bit. Give us an idea what a truly sustainable, regenerative energy system would look like. And then let's work our way back to where we are right now. Because I heard a lot in the keynote note here what we can do as small steps to get ahead. Now let's look at the decentralized. Oh, I'm getting carried away. You tell me if it has to be decentralized. So at an energy system that is truly sustainable, that can regenerate what we already did wrong, and that can also foster social justice. Rim?
Sure, I can start. I think you did say to start with that a good energy and and sustainable energy is an energy that we don't consume.
Right.
But we do still have to consume energy, so rightfully so. How do we do so? I think we have a lot to learn from emerging markets. SunFunder has been, for example, pioneering blended finance in emerging markets and trying to find solutions to finance clean energy from the get-go in the emerging economies, doing it in a economically reasonable way, so allowing populations to have access to energy first, because let's not forget that in Africa alone, around 600 million people don't have access to energy, which then evolves into issues around climate justice, social impacts, job creations, etc. How do we foster all of that? So the way we've tried to do it is by catalyzing capital into those markets, into solutions that can be decentralized. You did say it. The word was out. So our strong belief is that off-grid solutions are part of the solution, and even more strongly so in emerging economies where we're building it from scratch, and building a centralized grid-connected system is incredibly costly first, challenging from an infrastructure standpoint, and brings on a lot of complexities that are still being sorted out in emerging markets. So, love to speak about off-grid solutions and how they can be part of the solution.
All right, that's pretty interesting to hear that in your vision that is the future, and I'd like to hear a little bit more later about how can we finance this, right? Because that's very different from centralized solutions. So I switch right away to Deborah in New York, right? To get your take on that, please.
Thanks. So I think one of the most important, if not the most important thing, is to democratize energy by also worrying about equity and justice. And so I think a future state of energy would be that the very people that are underserved at this moment, and Rim just talked about that, would have access to energy, but they would have the access that they want and they need, and that's practical. And the way to do that is to engage them directly in the process of developing energy systems.
Okay, when we think about giving people access to energy, like so switching completely from this overserved European market that we had just got described by Vincent, and how we consumers can really scale down our energy consumption. Now we have a completely different challenge. We have communities that have no access. So if you see, we had the World Overshoot Day in France and Germany, right now, more or less. So we consume 2.5 Earth in France and Germany, 2.9, right? In Africa, I don't know, it's 0 point something. So if we all get access to energy, all of us humans, what does that mean? I mean, doesn't it accelerate climate crisis, and how can we prevent that? Gaël, what is your take on these emerging markets getting access in a sustainable way?
Thank you so much, Rim, for the question. I think the first thing, and you mentioned it, is to probably review the size of the energy systems that we are using, go from the centralized to the decentralized, go from the small, very efficient, cheap solar-powered or wind-powered systems, instead of sticking and keep repeating what we are doing now, which are the grid. Expensive, complicated to put in place and manage and control by a small majority of the population. So I guess we need to move from that and move to the decentralized. And then I think technology as well is going to play a big role. Disruptive technology. Earlier today, I had the opportunity to assist to a pitch session. So many great innovation. Great to see that people are being innovative. However, no matter how great your innovation is, if nobody can afford it, there's no point. So you need to make it affordable and accessible to those that need it. And that's something we at Koolboks, we understood from the very beginning.
Yeah, can you give an example, please?
Yeah, sure. So our solution today is solar off-grid refrigerator. So we use the sun to do cooling. And yes, we have a great technology, great design, great material, but we wanted to make it affordable. So to do that, we use a business model called pay-as-you-go. So it's like a lease to own. Our customer will pay in really small installments every month, every day, every week, if they want to have access to cooling. So that's what we do.
I see. Now comes into place a little bit the finance aspect of the whole thing, right? As pay-as-you-go, I have my experiences myself with startups. They have to invest a lot of money. They don't have it, right? If you do pay-as-you-go, well, who takes the cost, Rim?
Well, we do. Or the investors that have supported SunFunder do. The pay-as-you-go model that Deborah just mentioned has been instrumental in developing energy access across emerging markets. So as Deborah was mentioning, what is it about? It's really paying in installment a system. It can be a solar pump, it can be solar lighting, it can be anything that's actually clean energy powered for either electricity access straight away or for more productive use like cold storage. But as we said, it needs to be affordable. So who bears that risk of giving these populations 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3, sometimes even more, payment periods so that they can actually afford these equipments? SunFunder has been pioneering this since now 10 years. We've started really small, like most entrepreneurs, with a crowdfunding platform, and from there moved on to raising 3 funds. We're currently raising our 4th, and hopefully quite a sizable one, because we actually do believe that it's time to really scale all of this, and we're in the decade where we need to reallocate strong chunk of capital towards these solutions that have now proven that they're scalable. Just to give you an example, the Off-Grid Association, GOGLA, has a bold figure of reaching 1 billion people by 2030. They've already, since 2010, reached around almost 400 million people through these kinds of products. So with the support of financing of companies like SunFunder and others, that has been made possible. So there is a way, and we just need to do it at scale.
Okay, that's a good picture, but financing is a very general term, right? And I've seen many challenges in the past getting financing and also how to deploy it. So as a startup, you raise equity, that's normal, you always do that. If you tell the investor, I want to raise equity to finance my material, right? And then like years later, I get the earnings, all the investors turn away. So is there, perhaps also for you, Deborah, is there a way of accelerating the change in giving access to more loans, or are there investors now that are ready to give bigger amounts of equity to develop high initial cost? Or is this a public sector? So it's to all of you. It's to you, it's also to both of you, because that's an open question for me. It's not mainstream yet.
Well, I think the public sector certainly has a role to play, so that access to these, to finance can help.
All right, listen up, EIB.
Entrepreneurs. What? I'm sorry?
I just listen up, EIB.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And other other like organizations across the globe, because this is certainly a tremendous problem, is that this stuff is expensive, right? And entrepreneurs need to make a living, make a profit as well. They're part of the ecosystem. But in order for it to be equitable and just, it's certainly going to have to be at scale, and there has to be access to finance. So I would encourage us all to engage in public policy advocacy to make sure that these institutions play a role.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we're seeing it happening. Like the funds that we have, for example, are under a structure which is called blended finance. So thanks to investments from development finance institutions, we're able to crowd in more private capital into the space, which is what we need. We need more private capital, which is the biggest source of financing that exists, into this sorts of vehicle that have the track record and also networks on the ground, because you need to have met Deborah and Koolboks solution in order to be able to know that it's out there and needs capital and funding. So there is that. And on governments, absolutely agreed. But we're also seeing programmatic approaches. Nigeria, for example, through their REA, the Regulatory Energy Agency, has gotten the support of the World Bank to put in place a wonderful program for mini-grids and off-grid solutions. And they've connected, I think, 150,000 people just the last 6 months of last year, which is great. And we're seeing partnerships happening across the continent that are fostering those types of investments.
What do you see, Gaël, from your perspective at Koolboks as a startup? So how did you get started? Is there a difference in how you see your business, your startup, to what you see, for example, for completely European or France-centered businesses? And now, first from the financial aspects, can we learn something from that? Are we already further, perhaps, in startups that are creating solutions in the markets you are working in to become mainstream and to become, from the financial perspective, that we can accelerate this and we don't take a lot of time and a lot of very small financial investment rounds to get a good solution big? So what is your experience and what do you wish for?
We at Koolboks, we've been into business for 2 years now, but we can see in the last year that there is quite a big awareness from the financial institution trying to finance company like us. Not because we have, a great product, but because we are making a difference. And I think there's a switch, correct me if I'm wrong, Dream, with the productive use. Now, investors like you are also looking at productive use, how to empower the population, not just give them a solution, but how can we help them, generate revenue from the solution. So we are seeing that switch from domestic type of products to now productive use. We've been approached by quite a number of funds. The money is there. I think you just need to show that your model is working, that you have traction, and that there's a need for your solution.
Is your strategy, or let's say the other way around, what is your strategy as a company? So do your investors, for example, ask for the same things that a VC would ask for here, so that you're in a certain way growth, in a certain way profit, and also in a certain way exit-oriented?
Yeah, I guess it's a mix of both. They want to make sure that you are making an impact, but also want to make sure that your business is profitable. So it's a mix of both. And you need to find the right balance. Not sure if I'm answering the question.
Yes, sure. I would really like to hear your take, Deborah Gallagher, on this. That do we already have the tools to build a new system of financing and energy transition in terms of getting the right things measured that lead us the right way?
I don't think so. I think we need to, change the system as well. It's encouraging to hear that investors are looking more at productive use, because I think that's quite important. But I still think we're a long way from measuring what we need to measure to make sure that climate risk is reduced first and foremost, so that we actually have a planet to live on. That would be nice. But also to make sure that as we transform energy systems to using renewables and solutions like this wonderful solution, Koolboks, which I think is wonderful, that more and more people have access to it in a way that makes sense for them. That we have sort of a democratization of the process of developing solutions, as well as a democratization of the energy grid.
So yes, I think we are getting there little by little. That we don't have the system yet to measure the right things, but we basically know what you need to do. Let me summarize. We find tools. Koolboks is one of them that enable people to be productive and to be economically successful and economically sustainable while being ecologically sustainable. And that's, I have an example from a completely different market that is called Aquafarms, also from Africa, and that's a startup. I don't know if you know her, Deborah. You should. It's a great initiative, making small communities, rural communities, enable them by enabling a particular part of these communities. Women that want to create their own food at their own communities and don't have to travel far and don't have to buy it, with a very down-to-earth, simple system that is provided by this startup. And then they can thrive economically, right? Why they choose women, that is for a social reason, because they are those that have the drive to change things. So changing from the inside and giving the ability to help themselves, right? That's what we need. That's what we need to do, and we do not have the system yet. You said. So how do you get there? Who wants to answer?
We keep pushing. All of us here today, I think, is a testament to the fact that there is a momentum. Koolboks has been doing what they're doing for 2 years. Deborah has been studying the market for so long. SunFunder has been active for 10 years. EIB has been financing these topics for a long time also. So I think we have developed a strong knowledge. Now we know that it's scalable. We just need to bring all of this together and scale it, to be honest. We have to have the right tools to measure the impacts. We have to have the right tools also from a technology standpoint, because we haven't spoken about that a lot, but technology costs going down has driven a lot of this expansion. So it's not only about climate justice and clean energy, but it's also about cost. Africa, Southeast Asia are taking up these innovations because it's also cheaper. And we have to recognize that also in playing a huge role in the uptake of these solutions.
You mentioned it's cheaper, right? That's very true. But still, it doesn't feel that that the fact that decentralized and renewable energies are cheaper in the long run is not really reflected in the big investments that we have. And why is this? I think it's the complexity of the system that is not yet, and I would like to get there later with someone who's really deep into that from EIB. How we can tackle that, because the framework of the private financing is different, right? Do you have some examples? So I would like to know two things at least from you two in the last 5-6 minutes. So is there an example for a framework that you say, okay, that is really cool, we measure the right things, impact measurement is right, and that's what we want to present to governments to change and adapt the regulations?
Sure. First example would be in Uganda. We have financed a mini-grid company called Energie that has put in place 25 mini-grids in incredibly remote area in the north of Uganda. And they were able to do so thanks to actually a partnership that was led by the governments and a development finance institution that allowed them to have access to a subsidy under a program or an approach and a business model that's called results-based financing, which means that Winch Energy, the developer of this 25 mini-grid, had access to this grant upon reaching certain milestones of the construction of those mini-grids. So typically this is an incredibly powerful tool to first reduce the overall cost of the mini-grid by subsidizing it effectively. Second, it's also an effect, because it's tied to milestones, it's also an effective way to make sure that those mini-grids are actually installed. And lastly, it's also incredibly scalable because it is government-led. It's directed in regions where they know that the grid extensions are going to take time to get to those regions for a variety of reasons, etc. So those programs are being implemented across the continent. It's still small, but it's getting there. It's incredibly challenging, and we're seeing it happening. So that's one example. That's government-led with partnerships and so on. A second example, which is 100% private, is in the productive use, because we were also talking about productive use and how to develop that, is a company that's called SunCulture in Kenya that we have provided financing for. They're active in solar irrigation. So they essentially sell solar pumps to smallholder farmers to displace, most of the time to displace diesel pumps, but sometimes even just providing pumps for the first time to smallholder farmers. And thanks to that, they're able to tackle a number of issues. They're able to increase productivity of those farms, allowing those smallholder farmers to have access to better revenues. They're allowing them, as a consequence, to be able to hire, so jobs are increasing. And lastly, they're able to reduce the overall CO2 emission that's generated by the use of polluting pumps. One concrete example of how to be transformative, adaptive, and truly circular in the way we approach financing.
Cool, thank you. What I would like to take away from this discussion, we only have 3 minutes left, is then what we can learn from each other. So we heard a lot about solutions over here in the keynote of Vincent. Now we had some very interesting insights from all over the world, especially Africa, but also completely different other communities and markets. And your takeaway of how we could better work together, and or what we could learn from other examples from other markets in Europe, because that is also where a lot of money is deployed, and we're pretty slow in changing our energy system. So 1 or 2 more short answers before we have to end here.
Yeah, we definitely need to work together, learn from the mistakes, learn from the successes from one country to another. I know in Kenya, they are doing quite well when it comes to access to energy. I think as of today, 80% of the population has access to energy. In Nigeria, which is one of the biggest economies in Africa, you still have up to 65% of the population who still does not have access to electricity. So that's quite an interesting fact. So countries, governments can learn from each other, learn from their successes, their mistakes. Even us as startups as well, look at what is working in terms of business models. We did not create the pay-as-you-go model. That's something that was, in use before, but we could see that it was working, so we implemented that business model in our own company. So yeah, learn from each other and mistakes and successes.
Deborah?
Yeah, I think that's a really important comment to make, is learning from each other. But what I'm hearing too is that we need to partner. We need to work together. We need governments and businesses to work together with each other, but also to work with communities to develop the right solutions. And I guess finally, what I would say is we really need to measure the right stuff. Yeah. So unless we measure, unless we figure out how to measure progress in the right way, we're not going to know if we've made the right progress.
Thank you, Deborah. These were really, really great final words. As there's no discussion on facts. Facts are facts are facts, right? We just need to know them. All right. Now, we have to come to an end. It was great having you here.
Thank you
and
so much.
I would really love to continue discussion later. I have got all your contacts, so let's see what we can still make out of that. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And let us come to our last part, please. All right, now then, I would like to welcome for our final part of the session from the EIB, European Investment Bank, Grégoire Chauvière-Le Drian.
Thank you.
Welcome, Grégoire.
Let me sit.
So have a seat. We just sit down in the middle, the two of us. Cozy fireside chat. So a few words on Grégoire. Grégoire is here from behalf of the EIB. He is leading the office in France of the EIB. And please tell us a few words on you before and why you're here. And then let's jump into the discussion with all the topics that we just heard.
Yeah, we mentioned EIB in the previous discussion, and I think there is a kind of pressure on EIB shoulder as we are supposed to provide with a solution, or at least financing solution to the discussion we had previously. May I start perhaps by explaining what EIB is, what EIB does, because I'm sure part of you are not familiar with this bank. Which is a strange bank. This is a public bank. And this is potentially a strange bank because we are not looking for any profit. We are not looking for profitability. We are more or less looking for impact, for sustainability. And our mission is a public goal. We are fulfilling the objective of European Union. We have been set up by the Treaty of Rome in 1957. It's now more than 60 years of activity alongside the EU and also outside the EU. We'll come back on this. And we invest more or less 70 billion each year for the main four objectives of the EIB: infrastructure, SMEs, innovation, and environment. And guess what? It doesn't cost anything to the taxpayers. It means that all the citizens doesn't pay anything for EIB finance, solutions finance, EU objective all over Europe and all over the world.
Interesting. So, of course, my first question is not the question that I have here, but the question that refers to what you're just saying. So where does the money come from?
We issue bonds on the market, and we are the first Euro bonds issuer. Actually, you know, during the recovery plan for Europe with the sanitary crisis, we say that for Europe it was a big step forward. For the first time, we issue Euro bonds to finance, to mutualize the debt of countries. But actually, we were issuing bonds previously for the last 60 years because this is the model of the EIB. So there is no transfer, there is no budget transfer coming from the Commission or for the member state to the EIB, except for the shares that has been put in the institution at the beginning of the setup of the institution. But annually, there is no budget transfer. So this is a virtual model. It doesn't cost anything. It fulfills the objective of the EU, and it also there is a profit, even if it's not what we are looking for. There is a profit each year of at least between 1 and 3 trillion.
I see. So basically, because the audience not all experts here, we have a lot of audience online. Basically, you print the money, and then you decide to deploy it correctly in a better way.
We finance projects that are fulfilling this objective, and this is the European objectives that we are implementing, actually.
Right. So I'm right at the source. That's where the money is made, right? And now you all know how money appears. Now, we have in the EIB a very serious and strong source of funding, and I would like to know from you, what is your role? Has been your role in the past, and what is your role right now, and what is the strategy for the future? Is it changing? What has been changing? How do you specifically tackle this climate crisis and also technologies and solutions that are out there, for example, Plum Energie or Koolboks?
Environment was part of our strategy for a long time, and we basically dedicate about 25% of our activity for projects with a positive impact on the environment. It was our commitment during the COP21 here in Paris. But in 2019, during the European elections, we faced a wake-up call regarding the objective of 1.5 degrees, that we were, in a way, not to reach it. And we consider that we need to increase our objective and to go further. And we proposed to our governance, it means to the ministries of finance, European ministries of finance, to transform the EIB into the EU Climate Bank. And this is our new strategy with, I would say, 3 main objectives linked to this transformation into the EU Climate Bank. First of all, and this is the strategy we've presented to our board in 2019, before the COVID crisis. First of all, we decided to ending with financing fossil fuel energy. So, and we were 3 years ago, the first public bank to take such a decision. And what could be very satisfying, we have been followed by public bank and private bank. Secondly, we are fully, we know that we need to invest more. Usually, each year, we used to invest between 15 and 20 billion, between 15 and 20 trillion into projects with a positive impact on climate. We've decided to double this objective. From 25% of our activity, we will dedicate 50% of our commitment towards projects with a positive impact on climate and globally for environment, including biodiversity, waste recycling, and also water treatment.
Can you give some examples? I just don't want to cut you short, but examples are interesting.
Projects with finance, there are so many. We are financing in renewable energy, for instance, wind farm in France. We recently financed a wind farm park in Courseulles. We are interested in the next wind farm, floating wind farm park in France. We are investing in geothermy in Kenya. We dealt with this country previously. We are investing in biomass, in hydro energy. This is on production of energy. We are investing a lot for building renovation to avoid to consume energy. We discussed it previously. This is the best energy. This is the energy we don't consume. So we are investing for all the renovation of public buildings, private buildings. So this is also part of our activity. And we are also investing in recycling, for instance, for electric battery to avoid a new waste.
So I see we're very aligned on how we can act and how that we have to be very fast and take a lot of initiative in avoiding energy consumption. What I still see where we have very different points of view is the energy production. As when you say you invest in wind farms and in offshore wind energy, this has not essentially very much in common with decentralized and democratized energy production, which could be, for example, the very small solar energy rooftop of a private household, and there are still a lot of issues, or aren't there? And another thing is, when you're thinking of all these small projects out there, Koolboks is not a worldwide big corporate. What about all these small and very cool and very meaningful startups that are out there? Are you also investing these funds?
There are many questions in your question.
Sorry for that.
And I did not answer completely to the previous one. So anyway, I come back on three issues. First of all, democratizing energy access, energy transition, it's important, but we are facing a new geopolitical situation since the 24th of February. And the energy transition that was a positive objective is now a necessity. And we need to increase and to look for any other alternative energy production, avoiding gas, avoiding coal, and to provide to the European Union an autonomy and independency in terms of energy production. So we will invest in all other alternative solutions. So for us, it's a way to also guarantee the autonomy of the EU. The second comment on your question, and it will also be linked to our partnership with the ChangeNOW, that we are fully convinced that innovation is a key role, is a key point of the climate change, of the energy transition, ecological transition. That's why we are also investing a lot in all innovation that is proposed by big group who are investing in RDI. For instance, we financed last year Safran to look for a decarbonized motor for the aeronautic sector. We are investing in ArcelorMittal with, for sure, not a net zero carbon emission for sure, but we need to decarbonize this production. This is really important, and this is our role to support them to do so. And you mentioned we are also investing in lots of SMEs, directly, but also indirectly. And directly, if the level of investment is high enough for us to invest, it means above 15 million of investment, we are in a capacity to do so, to invest directly. And we do so, and we have here some examples that enterprise that has been supported, not directly by EIB, but with our institute, with different large range of tools, such as venture debt, quasi-equity. But we are not in a capacity to invest in small enterprises. That's why we are relying on financial partner, bank, public bank and private bank. For instance, in France, we are investing with BPI France, who is doing a big job in all territories in France. And we are also relying with funds. Rim knows that we are in a due diligence for the time being with her, and we will be very happy to support her in her activity, all in Africa, for example, because we are not in a capacity to do so. This is a big company, EIB, but we are only 3,000 to cover 50 billion each year of investment all over Europe and in all the world. Just to give you figures, an example of these figures, World Bank, who invest less than EIB each year, has potentially 10 more staff to do so.
So it's always a resource problem, of course. So to round this up, when I hear what you're doing, you are already a leader. You're going to lead more in this direction. When I have a world-changing idea, when I have a startup that is really with a technology that can go very, very far, but is still very, very early, is there a way of addressing the EIB, and when does this change? I know you don't have that much capacity. I would really like to know from the entrepreneurial point of view, okay, what do entrepreneurs do, and what can they do better to get public money from you?
I mentioned this limit of 50,000, which is the first step for us to invest, but hopefully the European Union has developed other programs, and we are partnering this. Funds, I mentioned it, like the Breakthrough Energy funds that we are supporting with Bill Gates to look for solutions. The Commission has also is implementing a new program. Its name is European Innovation Council. This program is we can manage to invest in equity, in debt, between 1 and 15 billion. It completes the EIB capacity of investment, and we have also the EIB Institute. And this afternoon you will have a pitch at 3 o'clock.
That's a good point.
Yes, and some of startups that are here in a ChangeNOW summit will pitch to get an award from the EIB Institute. This is a first step to get European support and to develop their activity.
Great, thank you for that. Time is already over, but that was a good hint that we could turn to this session later at 3. Just tell us again where.
I don't know exactly.
All right.
Sorry.
At 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and let's make it happen.
Very well.